On the morning the world expected her to smile the brightest, Binta Williams stood frozen in front of her mirror, staring at the wedding dress she had dreamed of for months. It should have been the happiest moment of her life, a moment wrapped in white elegance and quiet joy. But instead, her hands trembled. Her lips quivered. Her heart pounded like a warning bell. Because as she lifted the dress, something hidden beneath its flawless fabric slid into her palm. And with one glance, Binta realized that the past she thought she had outrun had come back, quietly, boldly, and without mercy, on the very day she was supposed to begin a new life. And for the first time in years, she whispered a question she never thought she would ask again. Why now? Welcome to Tales by Lima. Please like, share and subscribe. If you ever met Binta, you would first notice her calmness, a kind, soft-spoken presence that made people feel safe around her. She wasn't loud. She didn't try to impress anyone. She simply lived with quiet grace, like someone who had learned early on that peace was something you build slowly, not something that just happens. Binta grew up believing in beautiful things. Beautiful hearts. Beautiful moments. Beautiful futures. But most importantly, she believed in beautiful beginnings. Her childhood was simple, not luxurious, but warm enough to make her hopeful about life. Her mother had taught her that gentleness was not a weakness, and her father had always reminded her that hard work could make even the smallest dream blossom. Binta held on to those lessons tightly. She worked at a logistics company, welcoming customers with her signature gentle smile and soft voice. She wasn't rich, but she was content, enough to take care of herself, enough to dream quietly about a family of her own someday. And then came Daniel, the man whose presence felt like a promise that life could finally make sense. Daniel wasn't dramatic. He wasn't the type who came with loud entrances or big gestures. He was steady. He was sincere. And most importantly, he saw Binta in a way she wasn't used to being seen. He noticed how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was shy. He caught the way she whispered short prayers under her breath before making difficult decisions. He admired her ability to find kindness even on tough days. Their relationship grew slowly, beautifully. No rush. No pressure. Just two people learning each other's heartbeat. But beneath all her calmness, Binta carried something she never told him. A secret she hid so deeply that even she sometimes pretended it did not exist. A secret that made her feel undeserving of the peace Daniel brought. A secret she had swallowed long ago, believing honesty would ruin everything. Every time Daniel talked about the future, a small fear tugged at her heart. What if he knew? What if one day her truth slipped out? Would he still love her? Would he still see her as enough? But she kept smiling. Kept planning. Kept praying her past would stay buried for good. So when Daniel proposed, under warm lights, music playing softly in the background, Binta said yes with a glowing smile. But a trembling heart. In the months that followed, her life felt like a gentle dream. She and Daniel chose colors, venues, simple decorations, and plans for a life filled with partnership and hope. Everything was smooth. Everything was peaceful. And then, the dress. The one she wanted so desperately. The one she believed would make her feel reborn. She saved every extra naira she could. Skipped small pleasures. Worked late shifts. Chose discipline over comfort, because she wanted her wedding day to reflect the soft, beautiful life she prayed for. When she finally ordered the imported gown, she felt like she had stepped into her future with confidence. Little did she know. That dress was carrying something she had left behind. Something she never wanted to face again. Something, or someone, that once broke her spirit. But fate was patient. It waited until she was happiest. And then it came knocking, stitched into her wedding gown. The dress arrived on a Saturday morning wrapped in a large, flawless white box with gold trimming. It looked like something out of a movie, elegant, expensive, almost magical. Binta felt her heartbeat dancing with excitement and nerves. Lydia and Marie, her closest friends, were there. The kind of friends who stood by her through thick and thin. They were bubbly, lively, the opposite of Binta's quiet nature, but that was exactly why she loved them. They brought color where she brought calm. Open it. Lydia shook her arm playfully. Let's see the masterpiece. Marie added. Binta smiled, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted the lid. The room went silent. The dress was breathtaking. Soft pearl-white fabric that glowed even in the dim light. A silhouette that would make any bride feel like royalty. Delicate embroidery that looked hand-stitched with love. Everything about it felt heavenly. Marie gasped. Binta, this is beyond beautiful. Lydia held her chest dramatically. If I stare at it too long, I might cry. Binta laughed softly, but her eyes remained glued to the dress. She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. After all the sacrifices, the late nights, the planning, the praying, this dress felt like proof that her journey was finally aligning with joy. But as she lifted the gown gently from the box, her smile faltered, so slightly her friends didn't notice. Something on the inside of the bodice caught her attention. A small mark. Not big, not bold, but unmistakable. It was a symbol. A simple, almost artistic curve, stitched neatly. A symbol she had seen before. No, a symbol she wished she had never seen again. Her fingers froze. Her breath tightened. Her heart knocked against her ribs. She blinked, once, twice. Hoping she was imagining it. But she wasn't. The symbol was real. And worse. It was familiar. Too familiar. She felt the room spinning slightly, though she stood still. Memories she had locked away tried pushing through, sharp, uninvited, unwelcome. She quickly lowered the dress back into the box before her friends noticed her shaking hands. You're not saying anything, Lydia teased. You don't like it? No, I love it, Binta forced a smile. It's perfect. But inside her chest, fear had already taken root. That tiny symbol. That quiet little stitch. It didn't belong to the dress. It belonged to her past. A past she thought she had escaped. A past she thought she had defeated. A past she hoped would never cross into her new life. But it had found her, in the one place she least expected. And while Lydia and Marie continued chatting excitedly, Binta felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The dress had arrived with beauty. And with a whisper from the life she tried to forget. That night, when everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Binta sat alone on her bed, the wedding dress laid out before her like a silent question she was too afraid to answer. The symbol stared back at her. Small. Innocent-looking. But heavy enough to shake her entire world. Her chest tightened as she traced it with the edge of her finger, gently, fearfully, as though touching it too hard would wake a monster she barely survived. It was the exact symbol once used by someone she prayed never to meet again. Ethan. Even thinking his name brought a coldness to her bones. Years ago, Ethan had been a part of her life. A man who walked in with charm, and walked out leaving her mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, and painfully unsure of her worth. He wasn't physically harmful, but his control was like a quiet cage, one she didn't realize she had stepped into until she had lost too much of herself trying to please him. When she finally left him, it felt like she had been released from a trap she didn't know she was in. She promised herself she would never return to anything connected to him. Not his voice. Not his habits. Not his familiar patterns. Not even the smallest reminder of his existence. So seeing his symbol inside her wedding dress felt like a cruel joke life was playing on her. But it wasn't a mistake. Ethan's family owned a bridal design company. One she had unknowingly ordered her dream dress from. She took a slow breath, shaky, uneven. Her fingers slid gently along the inner lining. The fabric felt smooth, except somewhere underneath. A thicker patch. Something slightly raised. Her heartbeat quickened. She pressed lightly. The inner layer gave way. Was something hidden inside? She leaned closer, anxiety pressing against her ribs as she tugged a single stitch loose. A small folded piece of cloth slipped into her palm, almost weightless, but heavy enough to make her hands tremble. She unfolded it. There they were. Ethan's initials. Stitched in small, elegant embroidery. Her vision blurred with tears, not of weakness, but of the terrifying realization that her past had been sewn, literally, into the foundation of her future. She whispered to the empty room. "How did you find your way here? Why now?" Because this wasn't coincidence. Not after all she suffered. Not after all she tried to bury. Not after she finally found happiness. This was the beginning of something she did not understand. A puzzle she never wanted to solve. A truth she wasn't ready to face. But fate had decided. Binta's story was not done with this dress. Not yet. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. Outside, the streetlights cast a soft glow through Binta's curtains, drawing long shadows across her room. Normally, the calmness of night comforted her. She loved the peaceful hum of a city settling down, the gentle silence that came after a long day. But tonight, every sound felt louder. Every silence felt heavier. Every second felt like it was stretching endlessly. The wedding dress lay neatly folded at the edge of her bed, but to Binta, it felt like a storm sitting quietly in her room. A storm disguised in the purest white. She kept glancing at it, as though it might move on its own. As though it might whisper another unwanted truth. As though it might carry even more memories she never asked for. Her fingers brushed the initials again. Those tiny letters that had once belonged to a chapter of her life marked by struggle and emotional exhaustion. She remembered the day she walked away from Ethan, a day she had no strength to relive, but one that shaped her more than anything else. It wasn't easy leaving him. People often imagined walking away from a draining relationship as a single moment, a single decision, a single goodbye. But for Binta, it had been a slow, painful journey, one that took courage she didn't know she possessed. Ethan had a way of making her feel small without ever raising his voice. A way of questioning her decisions while smiling. A way of asking where she was, who she was with, what she was doing, all under the disguise of care. At first, she believed him. Then she excused him. Then she tried to change herself to avoid arguments. Then she tried to be perfect so nothing would upset him. But perfection has never saved anyone. When the relationship finally broke, it wasn't a fight that ended it. It was a quiet moment, the moment Binta realized she was no longer herself. She remembered standing in front of the mirror back then, staring at a girl who looked scared of the world, scared of speaking too loudly, scared of being misunderstood. That was the day she decided. Never again. She blocked Ethan. Cut ties with anyone who might take her back to him. Refused to revisit any memory that smelled like pain. She promised herself she would never allow her past to follow her. But here she was, years later, staring at the initial of the man she prayed to forget, sewn into the dress she planned to marry another man in. A silent tremor traveled through her chest. What did this mean? Was it a careless factory stitching? Was it a coincidence? Was it intentional? And if intentional, why now? Why here? Why on her wedding dress? She pressed her palms together and whispered a quiet prayer, the way she always did when her emotions felt too heavy. God, please help me. Please don't let this be something that destroys my peace. But the more she tried to calm herself, the more her thoughts ran freely like scattered pages of a book caught in the wind. How would Daniel react if he knew? Should she tell him? Should she ignore it? Should she return the dress? Should she pretend nothing happened? None of the answers felt safe. Daniel had always been gentle with her, but she had never told him the full extent of her past with Ethan. She felt it wasn't necessary. She felt it would complicate things. She felt it would make him view her differently. She wanted to marry Daniel as the woman she had become. Not the woman she used to be. Not the woman Ethan once controlled. But this dress. This dress threatened to drag her backward. Her mind replayed old conversations with Ethan, words that once made her doubt herself. Words that made her shrink. Words that shaped the secret she carried like an invisible scar. She sighed deeply and rubbed her forehead. The room felt smaller. The air felt tighter. She felt like she was losing the peace she fought so hard to build. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Binta stood from her bed slowly, walking toward the window. She pushed the curtain aside and stared at the empty street. Lights flickered. A stray dog crossed the road. A distant car drove by. Life was moving normally. But hers wasn't. Her wedding was a few weeks away. Her life was supposed to be settling into joy. Her heart was supposed to be relaxed. But right now, she felt like someone had placed a stone on her chest, small, but heavy enough to make breathing harder. She turned away from the window and looked at the dress again. The dress looked innocent. Beautiful. Perfect to anyone else. But to her, it looked like a doorway to a pain she thought she left behind. The weight of the world sat silently on her shoulders. As she lay back down, her eyes still wide open, one truth settled painfully into her soul. She couldn't carry this alone anymore. But that wasn't the scariest part. The scariest part was something deeper, something she couldn't deny. For the first time since she met Daniel, she didn't know if she could be truly honest with him. Not about Ethan. Not about the symbol. And not about the part of her heart still trembling like a wounded bird. Binta's breath shook gently as she pulled her blanket closer. She didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Because she knew. This was no ordinary problem. This was no simple misunderstanding. This was the beginning of a storm. And with her wedding drawing near, she had no idea how to tell anyone that the dress meant to start her new life. Had already begun tearing open her old wounds. Morning came, but Binta felt no difference. The sun rose gently, pouring soft golden light through her curtains, touching her walls, warming her room, yet nothing inside her warmed with it. She felt like someone watching the world from inside a silent bubble. Her alarm rang, but she was already awake. She had not slept a single minute. Her eyes were heavy, her lips dry, and her mind filled with tangled thoughts. For a moment, she simply sat up on her bed and stared at the dress folded neatly on the chair. Even folded, even untouched, it carried a strange heaviness, like a quiet reminder that her life had been interrupted. She inhaled slowly and whispered to herself, "You have to hold yourself together." But even her own voice didn't reassure her. Binta had always been the kind of woman who kept calm no matter what. She handled pressure quietly. She solved her problems without noise. She carried responsibility with grace. But this was different. This wasn't a bad day, or a stressful moment, or a misunderstanding she could wave away. This was her past knocking, confidently, on the door of her future. She forced herself to get ready for work. She tied her hair into a neat bun, slipped into her soft blue work shirt, and tried her best to appear composed. But her reflection in the mirror betrayed her. Red eyes. Tired expression. A sadness she worked so hard to hide. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and said, "Please don't let anyone notice." But as fate would have it, the moment she walked into the office, her colleague Olivia, who never missed anything, raised an eyebrow. "You look different today. Are you okay?" Binta forced a small smile. "I'm fine, just tired." Olivia wasn't convinced, but she didn't push. She simply placed a warm hand on Binta's shoulder. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here. Life is easier when you don't carry everything alone." Those words landed in Binta's heart heavily. If only Olivia knew how much she was carrying. Throughout the day, Binta made mistakes she normally never made, mixing up customers' details, misplacing delivery forms, forgetting simple instructions. Her hands shook each time she wrote something down. She hated that she wasn't herself. During lunch break, she sat alone outside the office, her food untouched. Her stomach felt too tight to eat. The sun was bright, children were playing nearby, and the world felt normal, painfully normal, while her mind spun in circles. Should she tell Daniel? Should she keep quiet? Should she pretend nothing happened and hope the dress was just a coincidence? But coincidences didn't come stitched with initials. Her heart whispered a truth her mind didn't want to accept. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And the longer she stayed silent, the heavier her fear grew. That evening, as she walked home slowly, she felt like someone who was trying to balance a cup filled to the brim. One small shake, one tiny stumble, and everything would spill. Binta had always been strong. But strength, even when quiet, has limits. And she was approaching hers. Daniel noticed it the moment he saw her that evening. He knew her too well. "Binta," he said softly, cupping her face with gentle hands. "Your eyes. Did you cry?" She swallowed hard. "I'm just tired, Daniel. I didn't sleep well." He studied her face longer, searching, trying to understand her unspoken words. Binta hated how Daniel could see through her even when she tried so hard to hide. "Did something happen?" She shook her head quickly. "No, nothing happened." But Daniel's eyes didn't soften. He looked worried. Deeply worried. They sat together in her small living room. The room was warm, familiar, filled with the scent of the vanilla candle she always lit at night. But despite the softness of the atmosphere, Binta felt tense. Daniel reached for her hand and held it gently. "Binta, we're getting married in a few weeks. I need you to talk to me. You don't have to pretend with me. If something is bothering you, I want to know." Her throat tightened painfully. How could she tell him that her wedding dress, the dress she had chosen with such excitement, now felt like a bridge between her past and her future? How could she tell him that a man she used to fear had somehow left his mark on her most sacred moment? How could she tell him something she herself didn't fully understand? She looked at Daniel, the man who never raised his voice, never made her feel small, never controlled her. The man who treated her like someone deserving of love. And that made it even harder. "I'm just stressed," she whispered. "The wedding planning, everything." Daniel brushed his thumb against her hand. "Then let me help carry some of the stress. Don't shut me out." Binta felt tears burning her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. She couldn't. Not yet. Not until she understood what was happening. They talked for a few minutes more, but the conversation felt forced, because both of them knew there was something deeper she wasn't saying. When Daniel finally left, he kissed her forehead gently and whispered, "Whatever it is. I hope one day you trust me enough to tell me." When the door closed behind him, Binta leaned against it and exhaled shakily. She did trust him. But she didn't trust the situation. Not yet. Not when everything felt so strange. The silence of her room swallowed her again. Her heart whispered the fear she couldn't say aloud. What if this is only the beginning of something bigger? For the next few days, Binta lived like someone walking on thin ice. She worked carefully. She moved slowly. She avoided long conversations. She smiled even when her heart felt heavy. She didn't tell Lydia or Marie about the initials. She didn't tell her mother. She didn't tell anyone. She was afraid that the moment she spoke the truth aloud, it would become real. Every night, she inspected the dress again, hoping she had imagined it, hoping the initials would disappear like a bad dream. But they never did. They stayed, neatly, boldly, confidently stitched. On the fourth night, she did something she had avoided for years. She searched her phone for Ethan's name. Her hands trembled as she typed it into the search bar, even though she knew he was blocked long ago. Nothing came up. Just an empty search screen. She stared at the blank results, feeling a strange mix of relief and fear. Where was he now? Was he married? Did he know she was getting married? Did he sew the initials himself? Was this some kind of message? And if it was, why now? She shook her head and closed her eyes tightly. She didn't want to go back there. She didn't want to remember the days she cried quietly in the bathroom. The days she felt trapped by love that never felt like love. But memories are like shadows, the more you try to run from them, the longer they stretch behind you. And now, they were catching up with her. One evening, a week after the dress incident, Binta returned home and found a small envelope slipped under her door. No name. No stamp. Just a plain envelope. Her heart immediately began to thump in her chest. Her hands shook slightly as she picked it up. She hesitated for several minutes before she opened it. Inside was a small card. Just one sentence written in neat handwriting she recognized instantly, handwriting she prayed she would never see again. I'm glad you still like my work. Her entire body went cold. The envelope fell from her hands. Her breath caught in her throat. Her legs felt weak. How did Ethan know about the dress? How did he send this note? How did he find her address? Had he been watching her? Had he been following her? Did he know about the wedding? A wave of panic rushed through her, shaking her from the inside. This was no coincidence. This was no accident. This was intentional. He wasn't just part of her past. He was reaching into her present. And for reasons she didn't understand yet. He wasn't done with her. Binta sat on her living room floor, the letter beside her, tears silently running down her cheeks. Not loud tears, but the type that fall in quiet streams, carrying memories too heavy for words. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the trembling. She had escaped him. She had built a new life. She had found love. She had found peace. Why was he coming back now? Why couldn't the past stay buried? The worst part was the silence of her home, the silence of her phone, the silence inside her own mind. She didn't know who to tell. She didn't know how Daniel would react. She didn't know if anyone would understand the depth of the fear she carried. She stared at the letter again, feeling her breath grow shallow. This was not just about a dress anymore. This was personal. This was calculated. This was dangerous. And she felt alone, painfully alone, standing at the edge of a situation she didn't know how to handle. By the next morning, Binta looked exhausted. Shadows sat under her eyes like bruises. Her lips were pale. She hadn't been eating well. She hadn't been sleeping. Something inside her had shifted. She knew she couldn't continue like this. She knew she couldn't hide this anymore, not from Daniel, not from her friends, and not from herself. She sat on her bed, holding the dress on her lap. The initials. The symbol. The letter. Everything pointed to one truth. Ethan was back in her life, whether she wanted him or not. Her heart pounded as she whispered to herself. You can't fight this alone anymore. This was the moment she had been avoiding, but also the moment she needed to face. Because secrets have weight. And hers was beginning to crush her. She wiped her eyes slowly, stood up, and reached for her phone. There was only one person she needed to talk to now. The man she was about to marry. The man who deserved to know the truth. The man she hoped would stand by her, even after hearing everything she had been too scared to say. She took a deep breath. And dialed Daniel's number. When Binta finally opened up to Daniel, her voice trembled, her fingers shook, and her heart felt like it was walking on glass. She told him everything, the past she hid, the pain she carried, the initials in the dress, the envelope at her door. She expected anger. Or disappointment. Or silence. What she didn't expect was understanding. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He didn't walk away. He simply took her hands gently and said the words she had needed to hear for years. Your past is not your fault, and it will never disqualify you from love. In that moment, the weight she carried quietly for so long finally began to loosen. Not disappear entirely, healing takes time, but loosen enough for her to breathe again. Together, they returned the dress. Together, they filed a report about the letter. Together, they took every step needed to protect her peace. Binta chose a new dress, soft, elegant, unmarked by her past. A dress that symbolized not perfection, but freedom. Not escape, but growth. On her wedding day, as she walked slowly down the aisle, sunlight pouring across the room, Binta felt something she had never felt so strongly before. She was no longer afraid of her past. She was no longer running from it. She had reclaimed her life. Her smile that day wasn't just joy. It was victory. And as she stood beside Daniel, exchanging vows with steady hands and a steady heart, she understood a truth she wished she had known years ago. Her story wasn't broken. It was beautiful. It was hers. And she finally stepped into her new life, not as a woman hiding her scars, but as a woman who had survived them, and blossomed anyway. Moral of the story. Your past may shape you, but it does not define you. Healing begins the moment you stop hiding your pain and allow yourself to be loved the right way. True love isn't about perfection. It's about partnership, protection, trust, and courage. And the things you once feared could break you often become the very things that show you how strong you truly are. Thank you for watching this heart-touching story. If it moved you, imagine how many lives it can inspire. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true life stories that heal, uplift, and remind you that you are never alone.